right, I'm going to go ahead and push live.
Myself.
There you go. Lynette, you're beautiful.
Thank you.
You are beautiful.
Let's see. All right, you guys are live.
Okay. Well, welcome. I am really excited to be with you to talk about the importance of challenge for secondary gifted students. My name is Lynette. I am the director of the Gatton Academy of Mathematics and Science, located on Western Kentucky University's campus. And I am going to get started here by sharing my screen. And as we go through tonight, I will start and invite feedback or questions so that I can be sure that I'm addressing your needs. So I mentioned I'm the director of the Gatton Academy, and I'll talk a little bit about Gatton later. This is a picture of our building. We are a residential STEM high school program where students finish their last 2 years of high school by starting college. So challenge is a very big part of what we offer and what we do for high ability students from across the Commonwealth. A little bit about me so you know where I'm coming from as I'm talking tonight. Before coming to Gatton, I was the Director of Advanced Academic Studies and Secondary Counseling in Spring Branch ISD, which is in the Houston area. So before moving to Kentucky, I worked in school districts of varying sizes, all mostly large. There was in Houston, which is really large. But my last position, I was responsible for advanced academic studies, which is college boards, AP program, international baccalaureate, dual credit. We also, as responsible for counselors, did a whole lot of work towards college access because our school district's goal was to double the number of students who completed post-secondary school, whether that was a technical program, a 2-year program, a 4-year program. So everything that I am going to talk about tonight comes from that background and that place, from working with students and thinking about how to best set up students for life after K-12 education. And so as I mentioned, I'm going to stop periodically to see this slide, and I will invite you to ask questions or make comments. And the fantastic JC staff will send those, facilitate those to me, and then we'll work on getting your questions answered. So we're going to start with the challenge of challenging gifted students. A bit of a conundrum there. Gifted students are always looking for challenge, but that is a really tough thing to do, particularly when students are younger, and it should get easier as they get older for us to challenge them, but then they're not used to challenge. So it's a process that we need to work on with educators and parents in partnership to really help our students flourish. So I want to start a little bit with some background about a characteristic of gifted students that serves as a foundation for what we're going to talk about. So gifted students' development is a little bit different than other students, the developmental pattern and the rates at which they develop in different areas. So in part here, P is physical, C is cognitive, S is social, and E is emotional. So those are kind of different areas of ourselves that develop. And as parents, you know something about these areas because you've watched your children grow. As educators, we have training in this area. And kind of the two come together to help us know that as students are growing, these 4 areas interact in a really synchronous way. So as I'm able to manipulate the world physically, that affects how my thinking gets more complex. As my thinking gets more complex, I interact socially in more complex ways, and I handle higher level emotional things better as well. And as each of these areas grow, they all move in a similar way together over time. For students who have more advanced abilities, their developmental rates are a little bit faster than their same age peers, but they're still progressing at a really synchronous rate. So their body and their thinking and how they interact with others and handle emotions are all moving and growing in a similar rate. Everyone's not at the exact same milestone at the same time, but they are somewhat relatively similar. In gifted education, our students are developing in these 4 areas at very different rates. And which area is developing faster depends on the type of giftedness that your child's experiencing. So in this image, this is a cognitively gifted kid. So a kid who's gifted in academics and in their thinking. So this student's cognitive development is far beyond their other areas, and it's developing at a faster rate. And that's kind of what we're testing for when we're looking for gifted kids and we're giving them intellectual tests, academically related tests. So their physical development style is on par with their same age peer. So is their social development. And their emotional development is going a little faster like their cognitive, but not at the same level. So let's say that this is a 15-year-old kid. But this 15-year-old kid has the intellectual development of an older child. And they have the physical development of a same age child. So at one time, they're like a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old and a 15-year-old all at the same time. So that asynchronous development can cause some hiccups for students because school is really designed for kids who are on a grade level, a similar development. So there's kind of dotted lines there on what would have been grade level or and so that is about where we would expect most kids in the grade level to be, and gifted kids are all over the place. And they have individual developmental patterns. So this is one child's pattern. It is not the pattern of all gifted, cognitively gifted kids. If your child is a gifted athlete or a gifted dancer, their physical development is going to be more advanced. So their P spike is going to be in a different place relative to same age peers. And if a student, if you were looking at musical ability, they also have asynchronous development. If I added a musical ability measure on here, it would be a spike, or visual performing arts. So it's really about, within their developmental patterns and to others. And then you add the complexity of their various strengths. So okay. I'm sorry, I thought I heard an exterior noise. So I wanted to pause and address that. Okay. So there's asynchronous development within a student in their developmental pattern. But we also have asynchronous development in their areas of strength. All students are not gifted in all things. That's one of the important reasons why the state of Kentucky identifies students as gifted in many different areas. So you can be general intellectually gifted, which is about having a high IQ, but you can also be gifted in math, or in reading, or in art, or drama, or in dance. So there are a lot of different ways kids can be gifted. We tend to sort of think that a gifted kid would be good at everything. And that's a myth. It would be like Einstein and Mother Teresa and Michael Jordan all in one. And they all had very noticeable strengths for which they are famous. But Mother Teresa is not famous for her ability to play sports and be a humanitarian and a selfless giver and physics. So there are some Prodigy people who have lots of strengths, but most gifted people have much higher strengths in one or a few areas than others, or maybe it's just one. So what we do to students' needs has to be tailored to their area of strength. One of the things we often hear people say is that it's important for students to be well-rounded. When actually, it isn't so important for students to be well-rounded. What's important is for students to develop their strengths. And I have a colleague at Texas A&M University who would say, well, instead of being well-rounded, we should let gifted students develop their pointy-points. So we want them to develop expertise. Do you care if your surgeon is a great musician also? Or that he can sprint really fast? You really care if he has great expertise in the type of surgery that he's doing. So we want to let people develop expertise, because to be well-rounded, you have to give up opportunities to develop expertise in other things. So it's really important that we focus on that strength development. And that's something we've been doing in other areas for some time, but somehow we've put pressure on advanced students to be advanced in everything. And sometimes they have those expectations about themselves. So we have to keep reminding them that, sure, we want to have high expectations in your area of strength and in your areas of interest, but not at everything. And that's especially important when you have siblings. Allowing one sibling to really highlighting what one is great at, and then highlighting what another sibling is strong in. It's an important balancing act to do within the family. So let your kids develop their pointy points. To go along with this, we want our students to develop grit. This comes from Angela Duckworth's work, and she defines grit as perseverance and passion for long-term goals. She did some studies to look at what made people successful in the long term. And high ability isn't enough. You have to have high ability and perseverance. You have to have that perseverance when obstacles occur, that you will keep working, that you'll keep trying and persevering even when things get hard. And interest and passion is a part of wanting to persevere. So we want our kids to learn how to do this in school in their areas of giftedness. Now, I don't know if you remember A League of Their Own. I'm dating myself, I know, besides my gray hair. But A League of Their Own was about a women's baseball team. And there's a great quote in this movie when the coach, played by Tom Hanks, says to Gina Davis, who is the pitcher wants to quit. She says, this has just gotten too complicated, too hard. It's just too hard. And he says, with great passion, it's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard makes it great. When our kids accomplish something that was hard, something that they didn't know how to do before, something that they really had to struggle to figure out and accomplish, that gives them deep self-esteem. We develop self-esteem through accomplishment, by overcoming. And that is a really important part of my developing self, is knowing what I can do through some hard work. But we have to make sure our kids have the opportunity to struggle so that they learn to persevere. So going back to my chart, if grade level is there where the green bars stop, and your child's ability is well above that, when is it hard to learn? When is it hard to accomplish something? It's not unless the teacher does some dramatic things to adjust for that level. So we want students working at the top of that level. Otherwise, they don't have opportunities to learn grit. Students need to struggle to learn and to develop perseverance. One of the biggest adjustments for students who come to the Gatton Academy is that perseverance piece. School has never been hard for them before. Then they skip 2 grade levels and they're in a college learning environment. Those are 2 big jumps. And for some kids who've never had to struggle before, the hardest transition isn't living in a dorm room or navigating campus or having a roommate. It's how to persevere when they don't know something automatically. Well, we don't want to wait till students are 16 to learn that. We want them to learn that earlier, because the earlier they learn to really persevere and dig in, and that learning isn't just automatic and easy, the better it will be for them long term. And that's true in what area of no matter what area of giftedness they're in. We tend to do a really great job in sports and a lot of times in music, particularly outside of schools, to get them at that challenge level, because they have private lessons, or in athletics, you try out for the team and you just get put with the right team at the right level. We need to apply that kind of logic and that kind of grouping in schools to be sure that students are challenged. Okay, so I'm going to take just a minute to help explain why this is really important and kind of a little piece about learning. So Vygotsky is a psychological theorist that has really informed how we understand learning. And he has a theory called the zone of proximal development. So this little circle is what I can do alone. And just outside of that is what I can do with help from someone else. So that's the assignment a teacher gives me. It's a YouTube video. It's a drill that the coach has set up for me. It's a piece or a practice run that my piano teacher wants me to do. It's something that's just beyond what I can do by myself, set up by another person. Once I've done that several times, that becomes what I can do alone. And my zone of proximal development, or my area of learning, moves out. So now I need instruction, I need support, I need something outside of myself in that next little area to help me learn. And as I work through those tasks, those activities, watch those videos, and that repetition that I need, that becomes what I can do alone again. And my zone moves out. So this process just keeps going. And this is true for all learners. So we call what happens in that zone of proximal development scaffolding. But that's just whatever structure the teacher or the YouTube video or the self-help book or my therapist or my coach gives to me. And those are the things that I work on that expand my learning. Well, there's sort of another way to think about this that comes from a guy named James Nottingham. He talks about this with students as being in the pit. So he says when we are doing really engaged, important learning, you have to get down in the pit first. So you start out at the top and you're thinking, hey, I think I know the answer to this. And then you realize, no, I don't get this. I don't understand it all. And that's when you're in the pit. And you have to do some hard work to get out of the pit. So you have to do some hard work to learn things, to figure it out, to repeat it, to really either figure out that muscle memory or change that habit or understand that concept. And as you're getting out of that pit, you have this great successful feeling because you climbed the mountain, you climbed out of the pit, and now you understand and you get it. And that feels really successful. Many of our gifted students, they don't have a pit. It's just straight across there, and then they hop up a little, and they're like, oh, I did it. Well, you didn't struggle to learn that. That's not something to really be excited about, because the struggle is an important part. Without that struggle, we don't fulfill our potential. The struggle is an important part of the learning. And so that's why challenge is really important. We want to be sure that our gifted students get down in that pit and figure it out. We want them to have those skills before they go to a competitive college or before they're out in the world for life. In life, we are in a pit often and have to figure things out for ourselves to solve the problem. Whether that's, how am I going to pay the bills this time? How am I going to structure my schedule so that I can get everyone everywhere they're supposed to be and take care of my business? Maybe it's, how do I solve a problem with a family member? You know, how do I decide how to help my aging parents solve a problem or make a decision? I just had to choose my insurance process. I was in the pit trying to figure out which is the best insurance plan for me. So regularly those things happen, and we want to prepare our students for that. I really like this visual as a way to talk to students about, it's another way to think about being in the pit. A lot of times, particularly now for secondary students on social media, they don't see other people struggle. Social media is full of the end product. Wow, I achieved this thing. I did this fantastic research. I won this award. This athlete, got traded to this team. Here's my certificate. They only see the top of the iceberg. They see the awards. What they don't see is everything that happened underneath that led to the success. So they don't see the setbacks. They don't see the sacrifices. Maybe that athlete, didn't go do things with their friends for fun for weeks because they had to be at practice every night. Or that musician who rubbed their fingers raw from that practice and their muscles are so tired. They don't see that. Or they don't see the student who's studying at home and not watching whatever's the most thing to watch on YouTube because they're having to study for whatever it is in the classroom. Students don't see, we don't put all of that on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter or any of the social media, right? We only put the good stuff. So students need to understand all of those other parts that go into that. So we want to set up opportunities for them to use that, and we want to set up opportunities for them to see that everybody struggles to learn to get ahead, and that struggle is welcome. It's a part of our growth. Okay, so with that little foundation part, I want to pause and see if there's feedback or questions. Because the next thing we're going to go into is talking about how you as a parent encourage your kid through this struggle.
We don't have any questions yet, but I'm intrigued by the second half of this because I was going to ask personally as a parent myself of two children, one a high schooler and one an elementary student. With my high schooler, she's high achieving. She is not gifted, but she is definitely high achieving. And for her, she did not struggle until her 8th grade year of middle school. So it was a culture shock for her. So knowing what I know now, with my son who is gifted, I've taught him how to struggle at an early age so that he now knows what coping skills he needs in order to be successful. So would you suggest that to teach your kids at an early age? I know we're focused on middle school and high school right now, but in the elementary, would you teach your parents and your students how to get through those struggling aspects, whether it's academic or it could be with sports? Both of my children hate to lose. So that was something that we had to work with them quite a bit.
Yes. The earlier students learn to navigate struggle, the better. It gets harder and harder. So in your example with your 8th grade daughter, suddenly encountering challenge, students put up a lot of roadblocks. What? that's not who I am. I don't know how to do that. And the longer you wait, there's more resistance from the student for trying the challenge or overcoming the challenge. So setting up opportunities to struggle when they're really young is important. So when I talk to teachers of elementary students, even preschool students, you want students to learn to handle the frustration of struggle, because that's a normal part of life and that's how we all grow. And you want to encourage that. And that's what we're going to talk about is, as students are doing that struggling, we want to be sure we're encouraging and rewarding working through the struggle, not just the end result. And as parents of secondary students, it's never too late to work through that. And they'll just need to be prepared for a little more resistance and intensity from students. So I mentioned that resilience part is hard for our students, and part of it's because they've spent all these years up through 10th grade in school being the smart kid who doesn't have to work, who doesn't struggle. And then they come here and it's sort of an identity crisis. Oh no, I'm the person who knows things automatically. What does this say? What's suddenly wrong with me that I can't do this? And we want to help them build an identity that includes, I'm a person who knows how to get out of some struggle and how to persevere. All right, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about how to encourage our kids when they're working through that pit or that hard part. So the Learning Pit, James Nottingham, also has a bit of a video talking about how to reward challenge. So I thought I'd let you hear his words, because I think his work is really interesting and really on point to this. All right, so here is James Nottingham.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about challenge and how we as parents and adults respond to our children when they are challenged. Tomorrow I'm going to go on a bike ride with my own children. I've got a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. The 3-year-old will sit on the back of my bike. The 10-year-old will be off she goes, very confident, knows what she's doing, away she goes. My 6-year-old, he's still a little bit wobbly. He's still not quite right on the bike. He's okay, but now and again he wobbles. Which of those three will we encourage more? Which of those three will we praise a bit more and say, very good, well done, you're doing great? Of course, our answer is the child who's wobbling. The child who can do it, we say good. The child who is wobbling and finding it a little bit challenging, this is the one that we praise, that we encourage. The problem is, children in school particularly, they think what they will be praised for is doing a good job. They think adults will praise the 10-year-old who is very good at it. And this is creating a problem in our children's lives, because the evidence, the research from lots and lots of studies around the world is showing that when we give children choice, lots and lots and lots of them pick the easier option. They pick the thing that they are confident with. They pick the thing they think they can do very well. Not because they're lazy, but because they want to be praised by the adults, praised by their parents. And they think that if they do a good job, they will be praised. If they don't quite manage it, their parents will say, do it again, or try harder. But if we think back to that bike riding example, we know that when children are wobbling, when they're finding it a little challenging, that's when they are learning. And the challenge for us as parents is, how can we apply that in other areas of their lives? So when they are studying language, when they are studying history and science and maths, how can we praise them more when they are wobbling compared to when they've succeeded, when they've done it, bang, bang, done? Then maybe we should say, okay, great, ready for the next challenge. And one of the things I've been saying here today with the pedagogues in daycare centres is that we should try to convince our children that easy is boring, challenging is interesting. Let's go on the adventures, let's go for the challenges. Let's not play safe with our studies, with our activities. Let's go for that challenge and really enjoy it. And let's hope that the parents, the adults, are going to praise us to keep us going, to look how much better you are getting at this.
So his work builds on the work of Carol Dweck, who's done a lot with growth mindset. That's really about thinking about how we learn and how we reinforce our students' work, and how we think about interacting with students, what we reward, and kind of what our thinking is or how we attribute success. So one of her important quotes is that, you know, success is about being your best self, not about comparing yourself to others. And that's something we really have to work on, because we naturally compare ourselves to others. That is something that we as humans just naturally do a lot. So we have to really work to shift that, to compare our progress to our previous progress. Let's only compare ourselves and measure our own growth rather than where I am compared to somebody else in the classroom or somebody else that I know. And really focusing on, we all grow from mistakes and from failure, from what doesn't work. That's how we know we don't know how to do this, and we have to try something different. And that's just learning. Learning is full of mistakes and failures, but we aren't really comfortable with that, and we don't reward that trying again, that students need that help with. So how we think about our abilities is really important in helping us think about growing as a person. So Dweck defines a fixed mindset as someone who believes that talent or ability is just natural, it's innate, and it doesn't change. So it doesn't matter what I do, I have this great ability, and that's going to get me through. And so, you know, I make A's because I'm a person who makes A's, and I have these abilities that I was born with. Growth mindset is about, well, I might have these abilities, but to really use them and to make a difference and for them to develop, I have to act on them. I have to do something. That abilities and talent are things that are developed. So it's kind of like Angela Duckworth's work on grit, where ability isn't enough. You have to persevere towards a passion. You have to take action and do something to really be successful long term. And so Dweck is kind of looking at, well, what people are more likely to be successful? Those people who have a growth mindset, who understand that effort and work will help me develop talents and abilities beyond just what I came with. We can all grow and develop no matter what level we are on that asynchronous development. We can improve all of those with effort, and that changes over time. So this comes from her book that in education we have really sort of latched onto, and we teach kids about growth mindset. So in many schools, you'll hear teachers talking about, is this a growth mindset viewpoint or a fixed mindset viewpoint? It's really about, I can't do that yet. I haven't learned that yet. Meaning that there's going to be a time when I can. So we want our children to love challenges and think, oh, I didn't get that. Well, let me keep figuring it out until I do. And then feeling really good about that. And the earlier we start, the better, but it's never too late. So that part's important to remember. It's never too late. In thinking about Dweck's work, a lot of the takeaways, kind of the filtered version, is that we need to reward students for effort. And that's something I have said in my training that I've done and with my own son. My son is very much a perfectionist. If he doesn't think he can already do something well, he's not really interested in trying, because he doesn't want anyone to see that he can't do something. And he gets incredibly frustrated really easily when he isn't just mastering something automatically. And he's 13 and now in 8th grade. And this is something I've known about for a long time. So we've been working on it a while, but he's still pretty intense and gets frustrated there. So we're still working on that. So I have to really pay attention that I don't reward his grades. I don't think about his grades. We talk about, well, how hard did you have to work for that? How long did you think about it? How many times have you practiced that? And then Dweck has some great thoughts on praising process. So she calls it process praise, which isn't just about effort, but her focus is we aren't focusing on the end, kind of like James Nottingham was talking about. We're talking about praising along that journey so that students are rewarded for that. So I want you to hear directly from the expert about how to do that praise. Oops, of course I clicked.
A lot of people think process praise is just about effort, that you shouldn't praise the child's abilities or talents. That's correct. But then the only thing they think you should praise is effort. But process praise is much bigger than that. Did the child try different strategies? Did the child focus? Was the child resilient in the face of errors? Did the child make progress? And also, it's not just praising the process, it's paying attention to it, asking about it. You don't have to always be praising your child, but appreciating the process they engaged in, asking them about it, discussing it with them. All of this tells the child what they did to bring about this lovely, wonderful product and what they can do again in the future.
I love the way she describes this because she prompts us to remember that attention is a reward for our children and our students. We as humans need attention and we need interaction. And so when we pay attention to what a student is doing or our children are doing, that is a reward. So talking to students and your children about, well, how did you work this problem and what was your thinking as you were going along here? Or why did you make this decision over that decision? Oh, that's interesting thinking. When we're paying attention to that and engaging about that, it's rewarding that process and drawing attention to that part of what they're doing, which is so different than what we've done in the past, right? So a lot of times in the halls, you see students' finished products on the wall, or on the refrigerator, it's the finished product. When really what we should be putting on the refrigerator is the grade that's, maybe a C the first time, and then the A on the test because they went from a C to an A through hard work. You want to recognize that process, not just the end product. I know culturally this can be really hard. My grandmother gave us a reward when we got A's. So she would give us money when we got A's. And she wanted to do that with my kids. And we had to talk about, well, I don't think that's a good idea because that only communicates that you care about the end. So I'd rather you find other ways to reward them and talk to them about what they're doing in school every day, not just the end result. And it's something I have to remind myself about as well. So the harder you work, the smarter you are, and the smarter you are, the harder you work. That comes from Sylvia Rim, a child psychologist who specializes in gifted ed too. So all of these experts are putting all of these things together to really help us think about how we communicate, what we spend time on, what we reward. And it's a process for you too, right? So if we're used to being praised for the end product, like we were as kids, then, that's what we're going to tend to do. So you have to remind yourself, Maybe you need to put a note in your calendar or, you know, a note on your phone. I only know what to do because it's in my calendar and it dings and tells me. Well, when your calendar dings and tells you at the end of the school day, remind yourself to ask the student about, what did you do that was hard today? What did you do that was nice for somebody else today? What did you know today that you didn't know at the beginning of the day? What did you overcome today? What did you see somebody else overcome? So really talking about that, and then talking about that yourself. Well, today I made a mistake that I had to overcome. Here's the mistake I made, and here's how I fixed it. I'm really glad that I was able to work through that because now I know more and I have a better outcome. And that's another piece. As adults, we hide our mistakes a lot. It's, you know, it's important because that's how we learn and grow too. So owning up to our mistakes and letting kids see that we make mistakes and that we're growing is an important part of modeling that. So if we make a mistake and we have big reactions about those, that's what our kids are going to be doing. So a lot of helping communicate what we want our students to do, our children to do, is to focus on doing them ourselves and set reminders so that we're all growing in this together. All right, so with that, I'm going to pause again, see if we have any other questions.
So you talked your last part talked about having those conversations with your students. And again, as a parent of 2 children, in the beginning with my daughter, you know, I said, oh, how did school go? You know, those blanket questions. But then I switched my mindset and I asked her, what did you do that made you smile today? Or what did you do today that you didn't do in the past? And then with my son, we've really taken that route of what's one new thing you learned today? Because we want him to see that it isn't always going to come easy, like you said, and that there are times when he's going to have to branch out of his comfort zone because he's much like your son. He is not going to do it if he doesn't know how to do it 100%. And if he's not going to be completely perfect at it, he's one of those kids that's going to erase holes into his paper. You know, no matter how hard we try to praise him and tell him that it's okay to make mistakes, you know, just shifting that mindset for him. So we had to shift our mindset as parents and even just convey to him, like you said, it's okay to make mistakes. If I make a mistake at work, this is how I'm going to deal with it and how I'm going to improve upon it. Or if we make a mistake here at home, you know, maybe I accidentally drop something on my toe and I scream. You know, while it's a natural reaction, we talk about, okay, that was the feeling that we had, and just getting him to understand that it's okay to have those feelings and how to cope with those feelings and to have those true conversations with your children. So if I'm a parent, how can I make sure that this is happening in my school, and how can I encourage it in my school?
That's an important conversation to have with teachers about how do you reinforce growth mindset in your classroom and how do you help students learn from mistakes? Because as partners, if we can mirror some of the things that are happening in the classroom, that can be really beneficial. So then we're presenting a united front and we're consistent in that communication. So that's a really good conversation to have with a teacher, asking, tell me how you do this in your classroom so I can reinforce it at home. And then, you know, just continue that. Or when you're, maybe it's not an or, it's probably more of an and. When your student is struggling with something, the conversation to have with the teacher is, how can we support my student who's struggling in this and reinforce that the struggle is a positive thing? So you want your child to have those struggles. And if they're not, you want to have a conversation with your child's teacher about, my child never seems to really struggle on things from my perspective. Do you see that in the classroom? Because I want my child to have some struggles. How can we work on that and set that up for them together? And, you know, parents often are getting communications from teachers when you get those Infinite Campus grade notifications, right? Don't freak out when it's not a good grade. That's an opportunity to say, oh, it looks like you really have something you're going to get to learn. How is that going? How do you feel about that? I'm excited that you're going to be learning something new, because that's what this shows. You haven't learned this yet, but think about how good it'll feel when you do. And then, when they learn it later, come back and say, remember when you got that first grade and now you have this other one? Look at how much you learned. And talking about that with the teacher as well, I'm working on this at home, how can we work on this together, is another good conversation to have. You may, when your child comes home, need to ask some really specific questions that are really different. Because when I ask, how was school? Fine. What did you do today? Nothing. Or the same. I don't get very interesting answers because I'm asking not very interesting questions that are the same all the time. So I need to ask different questions and then answer those questions myself as well. So when I talk about my day, how did I make something better for somebody else today? Oh, here's what I did. And here's when I did something really hard today. I had this conversation with someone. I didn't feel really good about it. So I need to figure out a different way to do that for the next time, because I want to get better at this. So really having those kind of nitty-gritty conversations, I think models things and helps your children learn how to do that themselves. Maybe you need to put some sticky notes up around your house that says, hard work is important. Making mistakes is part of learning. Someone asked me about what I did that was hard. Just something that helps you remember and your child remember as you're beginning to change things that you're doing. I love this cartoon. So this kid seems to have understood that it isn't about the grade, it's about the learning. I'm not sure that's quite what the parent had intended. So that is one kind of fun thing about gifted kids. They're pretty good at turning things around on us. But for me, this is going to transition us to talk about grades. So when we're talking about praising the end product in schools, that's grades. And there are some high achieving gifted kids often care about the grade because they get praised for the grade. Our systems reward the grades. For some people, we feel that's motivating to have grades. There are plenty of gifted kids who do not see grades as a motivating factor at all. They do care about the learning, and they will learn in the classes in which they're interested and in which they have a connection with the teacher, and they will do the bare minimum in the others. And those are really tricky situations because it's hard to help a kid play the game of school when they see it as a manipulation, and they value the learning, excuse me, which is what we want them to value. So it's important to have some conversations about GPA and what is it and why is it important, and challenge. So grade point average is really a high school thing. It can start in middle school if a middle schooler takes high school credit classes that count towards high school graduation. Then once you're taking high school classes, grades in those accumulate into a grade point average. So what is the average grade that you have? And that tends to be used, that's used for ranking and it's used for college admissions. And there's sort of a debate. Is it more important to have a high grade point average, or is it more important to take challenging courses? And we're going to get into that. So with gifted kids, it's really important to understand that their social emotional needs and their intellectual or ability or cognitive, their talent needs are inseparable. A lot of times we talk about, we want to meet their social emotional needs, or here's what we're going to do for their talent development needs. But a child isn't going to feel good socially and emotionally if they aren't working at the right level of challenge for them. And they aren't going to be able to do a good job working at the right academic challenge or talent development level for them if their social emotional needs aren't being met. So it's sort of a vicious cycle. Part of this comes because all of those things are connected in our brains. So they're not separate things. They all kind of come from our brain and our limbic system and all of these systems in our bodies that work together. Nicole Tetreault is a neuropsychologist who really interested in gifted people, and she kind of helped me see about why the intensities within gifted people are all connected. So how we think, gifted people think really intensely, they have intense emotions, and they often have intense body experiences. So how their body experiences the world or their physical abilities, all of those are tied together because it's all tied to the biology of the brain, how the brain is wired, all the myelination in the brain, the connections between parts of the brain. So all of that is enhanced, which is what gives them the talent that and ability that we can see, but that leads to intense emotion. And so navigating teenage years with a gifted kid is quite the experience because they came with the intensity before they got the hormones. And then the hormones just makes it all more dramatic. So in a later session that focuses on social emotional needs, we'll be sharing some strategies to help deal with that and help you understand it and help students understand that too. But helping your child as they are going to encounter challenge, have strategies for managing stress. So getting enough sleep, really important. Not enough sleep makes everything so much harder. We're more emotional when we don't have enough sleep. Our bodies don't work as well when we don't have enough sleep, and neither does our brain. We don't remember, we don't work, so we can't perform optimally if we don't have enough sleep. And then making sure that students are exercising. A lot of, if your gift or your ability isn't in a physical area, then many people who are gifted aren't interested in the physical side of things. But to really keep us healthy and our brains working right and our blood flowing and being in an optimal performance area, we need some physical exercise and moving. So that part's really important too. And then breathing techniques, talking to other people, maybe journaling, just some other outlet for stress is really important. And as our kids get older, it becomes more important that they have those stress management strategies because they get more intense, life gets more complicated. So we want them to have those outlets. It's also really important that we communicate to our kids that they are far more than a test score or a grade. So as we're reinforcing effort and the process they're doing and navigating frustration, and frustration is being a healthy part of learning, we want to make sure that they value who they are and all the parts of them besides their grade. And this is something we work on a lot at Gatton because our students come to us having been very successful in school with very little effort. And so their identity, who they are, is really wrapped up in that grade. We want students to understand that they are a good friend, and being a good friend and having relationships with other people is really important. They're really strong and resilient, whether that's strong physically or strong mentally or strong in the face of obstacles. We want them to see that part of them. Maybe your child is really interested in the environment and they're environmentally aware and environmentally active. That would be a part of them. Maybe your child is really creative. So that could be a part of them. And then that little balancing there is about making ethical judgments, that your child develops a good moral sense and makes hard decisions in difficult situations where they're going to pick the decision that's morally and ethically right. all of those things are so important, and they are much more a part of who you are than getting an A or a B on something. So reminding students of all those things are valuable is important, because school is going to end. I mean, at some point, you don't stay in school and get A's and B's forever. And we want our kids to be seeing themselves as contributing people beyond just an A or a B. So they need to see all of the wonderful complexity in themselves that you see. And that is our talking about and praising those parts of them. So when they're a really good friend, tell them what they did that made them a good friend. You know, your friend was having a really hard time with something, and I know you were frustrated, but you didn't show that part. You just were a really good listener. I appreciate how good a listener you were. That makes you a good friend and a good person. Man, you thought of a solution that I didn't even think of. I'm glad that you kept thinking about all the different ways to solve this problem. I appreciate all that different thinking that you did that got us here. So really thinking about those parts besides the grade is really important. So I kind of said that grades don't last forever, and they don't. And part of that is also helping our kids be ready for the next pond they will be in. So, you know, kids go from elementary schools that are smaller than their middle schools, which are smaller than their high schools, which may or may not be smaller than their college, but the pool of people they are around changes. And so if you are the big fish in the little pond, when you move into a bigger pond, there are fish as big as you or bigger. And that can be really daunting. There's quite a bit of research that looks at how we compare ourselves to others academically, and that our self-esteem and self-concept can take a hit when we move into a bigger pond. And how we navigate that hit to our self-esteem and our self-concept really depends a lot on the resilience we've built ahead of time. And then it's important to find the pond that's the right fit. You don't want a place that's too easy or a place that's too hard. So you want to find classrooms for your kids. And that's what teachers are doing all the time, trying to find the right fit challenge for your child. But because of pressure, because so many parents tend to, well, why didn't my kid get an A? Of course, I have an A student. If your child is only making A's, they're not being challenged. So that means you need to have conversations with the teacher about, oh, I'm concerned that my kid's always getting A's. I want them to have to struggle and work through things. That's not the message teachers have been getting from parents over the last several years. So you want to be that voice for challenge. And so teachers can adjust for that in the classroom. As you're making decisions about what high school classes a child should take, or should they take advanced program, AP in Jefferson County we're going to talk about, or dual credit, or what level of challenge is right, you want to be thinking about the best fit so that your child is in the right size pond or ready for that jump to a bigger pond with bigger fish. Okay, so I mentioned advanced program, which is easily confused with advanced placement. So let's talk about the difference between those two things. Advanced placement is a program by the College Board. So the College Board is an organization that has the SAT and the PSAT. They also have some college application kind of pieces that belong to them. And AP, advanced placement, are college level classes that students take in high school. And it's a curriculum program that schools choose to offer. And to offer it, you have to train teachers very specifically and use their curriculum. And that at the end of the year, students take tests in that curriculum to demonstrate mastery of the content. And that can lead to college credit, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Advanced placement also owns curriculum called pre-advanced placement or pre-AP. And those are AP and pre-AP are widely used curriculums in schools across Kentucky, across the nation, and in some international schools abroad, American schools abroad. The advanced program, so JCPS's AP, is a program specifically designed to serve high ability students in Jefferson County Public School. And it is not this national curriculum that comes from the College Board that would be the same school to school across school districts. And the advanced program begins younger than high school or pre-AP middle school. And there are specific entrance criteria. So JCPS is now working to kind of define how advanced program and gifted and talented work together, kind of what that Venn diagram looks like, when it's absorbed in one and how they work together. So today, when I am talking about advanced placement, or I use the term AP, I'm going to be talking about College Board's AP, because now we're shifting into talking about getting ready for college. Okay? So this is a great chart that came from an article that in the Challenge magazine from here at Western Kentucky University, kind of comparing advanced placement versus dual credit. So these are two ways that high school students take advanced coursework that can get them some college credit. Now, college credit varies widely by college. Every college and university sets their own rules for what they accept as college credit, what they don't accept. Sometimes they accept the credit and means on your college transcript, you will have hours for that class. Sometimes giving credit at a college means we're going to give you placement credit, which means you don't have to retake that class. You can take the next class, but that first one's not on your college transcript. So advanced placement. So AP with the College Board requires that training. Western Kentucky University offers that training, and so do a number of other entities. Teachers really focus on depth here because it's like a college course, but taught by high school teachers in high school classrooms. At the end of the year, students pay to take a test. Sometimes that's been covered by the state, sometimes not. Budgets are terrible, so you'll be paying for that. So the AP test happens at the end of the year, and students who score a 3, 4, or a 5 on a scale from 1 to 5 may earn college credit. So there are a litany of courses that are AP. There are a number of different math classes that are AP. There are a number of different science classes that are AP. English has AP classes. Social studies, so there's history and government and economics. There are also foreign language classes that are AP classes. So depending on the courses and the offerings at your child's school, a child can take a test and get credit for that specific thing. And then each university assigns credit differently. So not just different colleges offering credit differently, but even within the college. So a university might give transfer credit, like on your transcript credit for a 5 in Calculus BC, but they might give credit where you don't have to retake the class if you make a 3. But in history, they might give you actual credit for the class if you make a 3 on the US history exam. So when we're talking about advanced placement, there's a lot of variability in how that's applied at the university. All right, let's switch to dual credit. Dual credit are college courses taught by people approved by the college. That could be at a child's high school, so the high school teacher's been approved as a teacher at the university as well, or the community college, or they can go to the college to do the dual credit class, or it might be an online class that's taught by the university person and given credit. In Kentucky, 2-year colleges and 4-year colleges have dual credit programs. They usually have relationships set up with the school district to offer different things, and how it's paid for can vary as well. In Kentucky, students can have a scholarship for a couple of dual credit classes. So financially, that can be really advantageous. It's usually a lot, I mean, the course depends on the relationship that the school district has and the courses and whether you're taking your 2 or not. Now, when you pass the class, if you've taken it at an approved university in Kentucky, it should transfer to a state school in Kentucky. If your child wants to go outside of Kentucky, it may not transfer. So that's where the variability comes in for dual credit. So there's also some debate as to which is more rigorous. It really just depends on what content area your child is interested in and what those opportunities are at your child's school to help you make that decision. And there is an article about this available on WQ's website, and we will work on making that available more widely as well. So in thinking about challenge, high schools offer dual credit and advanced placement. In Kentucky, we also have 2 state-supported residential STEM programs for high school juniors and seniors. So the Gatton Academy, that I lead, is on the campus of Western Kentucky University. So students apply to us during their sophomore year. By the time February 1st is our deadline. And then when students are accepted, they move into our residence hall, live in our building, and take all of their classes on the university campus. So they basically finish high school by starting college. It is a very rigorous and challenging opportunity for students who are really ready to pursue science, technology, engineering, and math at a really advanced and in-depth level. It is state supported, so students' tuition, fees, housing, and meals are all paid for by the Commonwealth. And students can stay enrolled in their sending schools. So there are Jefferson County Public School students who attend the Gatton Academy and stay enrolled in their sending school. So Jefferson County Public Schools benefits from the students' test scores and their daily attendance fund. So we try to partner to really give students an advanced opportunity. There's another school that's modeled after Gatton called the Craft Academy. It's on the campus of Morehead State University. And same setup, live in the dorm, go to school at Morehead, totally embedded. Scholarships the same, so we are very similar programs. And when Craft was developed a few years ago, it was very much patterned after Gatton, and both are good options for students. We have a little bit different curriculum, a little bit different strengths depending on our universities, so students should look to see which is the right fit for them. So both of us require students to have a math ACT score, so that's a sophomore ACT score of 22. And you need to finish Algebra 2 by the time you come to us, because our students start in more advanced math. It's very much like applying to college. And if you wanted more information about applying to either of us or more about our schools, our programs, you can Google the Gatton Academy or the Craft Academy at Morehead. You'll easily find us and we can get you more information. So as you're thinking about what's the right level of course to challenge your child, it's really important to think about balance. We don't want our students to only associate themselves with their academics. We want them to understand that all different parts of them are important. So family is important, friends are important, health is important, and we don't want any one of those things to take over the others to where we can't be successful in managing all of those parts of our lives. And academics eventually ends and transitions to work. So we talk as professionals a lot about work-life balance or lack of work-life balance. Our kids need that balance too. They need school life balance. And it's important to think about what level of challenge in their courses allows them to have balance in the rest of their lives. So we do not want students to take 10 AP, you couldn't take 10, but only AP classes at the expense of never spending time with their friends, not doing family outings, not getting enough sleep. That's not a healthy trade-off. So it's important for them to have, all four legs of their chair and not be missing one, to remain a healthy, well-adjusted. This is different than being well-rounded, right? Where they don't get to have expertise. You still want expertise, but you want some balance in your life so that you can remain healthy and our kids can have a healthy outlook and long-term have a healthy balance. So a lot of times people feel a lot of pressure for their students to be only in AP classes or take as many honors classes as are offered because that's the best way to get into college. So there's a lot of talk about how to get into the right college and that starts at middle school. Well, you have to do all these ACT preps and you have to take all the most rigorous classes. None of that works if it's not in areas your child is interested in or if they have to sacrifice having friends or being healthy or spending time with family. Some sacrifices are normal at different times along the way, but not to the exclusion of things. So I think this is a great quote from actually a consultant and a company that helps people get into college. It's really about balance. So a lot of people say, is it more important to have straight A's and have a high GPA or to take challenging classes? This is not an either or thing. You want both. So you want to choose the courses in high school that give you challenge, but that you can also manage. So some AP classes and some not are what most people will choose because we don't want kids' grades or kids suffering. Fit is super important when you're thinking about college. And I can tell you, as the mom of a child who was very particular about when he cared about his grades and when he wasn't, that there is a college for everyone. My oldest son, you could tell when he wasn't getting along with the teacher anymore because he'd go from an A to a C. And there was very little I could do about that. That was him. He was all about the relationship with the teacher and his interest in the course. But he went off to college, a good college that was a good fit for him. He's now in a master's program in English. So he is being successful in his life on the path that's right for him. And he did it without all straight A's and not being in the top of his class, despite being a very gifted kid. So as you're thinking about colleges, start researching. It doesn't have to be a high pressure thing. Start talking to your kids, no matter how old they are, about what college can be like and how learning things that you're really interested with other people really interested in that thing can be really engaging and fun. And learning from experts who struggle and experiment and make mistakes constantly trying to find the next breakthrough in that area. Wouldn't it be interesting to learn with them? So think about starting early, to think about the different kinds of colleges that you might want to expose your child to and that you might want to think about too. So College Board has a website called Big Future, which has wonderful college research resources. It talks about fit, it talks about deciding if a big school or a small school can be helpful. They have just tons of resources that I have found to be really helpful, and I have recommended it to families for a number of years. There are thousands of colleges out there. So it's important to find the one, or actually maybe the 8 that you want your child to apply to, that your child wants to apply to, that are a right fit for them. There are state schools, so publicly funded universities, although their public funding is very small percentage of what they receive in their funding, but they are state schools. There are Ivy League schools, so those are the ones their names. Harvard, Yale, MIT. Then there are near Ivies, which are highly selective universities like Rice and Vanderbilt that are very strong private schools that are very similar to Ivy League schools. There are liberal arts schools. Liberal arts schools, they actually come in different sizes. Many are small, but liberal arts schools often encourage students to delve in many different subject areas at the same time. So yes, you can major in psychology and be pre-med too. Or you could major in economics and Chinese. Or you could design your own major. So there are places that are really looking to connect disciplines, and many gifted kids thrive in that kind of environment. And then there are technically focused schools. So, Purdue and Georgia Tech, schools that are very focused on MIT, that are very focused on technology schools. And so as you're talking about colleges and looking at the realm of possibilities, be broad in thinking about that and exposing your child to thinking about all these different places. When you're thinking about fit, there are lots of components to that. Student interest is an important part. So if my child really wants to major in environmental science, then I need to find a college that has that as a major. And not all colleges do. If my child really wants to be in a music program that's really strong, well, not all colleges have great music programs, so might need to look for that. The location and size. Are you a big city person or a small city person? Actually, it's not what you are, it's what your child wants. What environment do they want to be in? Do they want to be in a college town? Or do they want to be in a big city where the college is one part, but there are tons of other offerings? Or maybe they want to be in a college in a rural setting that has lots of opportunities to spend time outdoors. That's important. Then the size of the school is important. Do they want to be at a Big Ten school with tens of thousands of other students and finding their niche there? Or do they want to be in a small school that has a small community where the environment just feels a little bit different? There's also a range of selectivity. Thinking about that, there are, the Ivies have very small acceptance rates, no matter who you are. They are tiny. So you don't want that to be the only school on your list, right? There are also schools, often state schools, that look at GPA and test scores, and then you know what your scholarship is. So that's not a bad option. One thing I do want to point out when I'm talking about that scholarship piece, a lot of students don't apply to liberal arts college or private colleges because they think it'll be more expensive than a state school. That is often not the case. They have endowments, lots of scholarship programs. So you want to apply to a range of schools that your child sees as a good fit, because financially it could be. And you don't know really until you've gone through the application process and see what they've offered. And then some schools have really niche offerings. Northeastern has a really big co-op program in their engineering program. It's a requirement and it's something built into their curriculum. That's really stands out to some students. Others have a really neat community. Chicago is known for its practical jokes in the community that they have built. They have all kinds of games and pranks that students participate in over time, and that's something students might choose. Texas A&M has a huge tradition in all of the culture of the school. That might be attractive to some. Others have really unique housing kind of programs. At Amherst in Massachusetts, their dorms are really old homes that have been refinished, and people live in a home with a dorm parent, and their community really revolves around that dorm. So, and Yale also has kind of that housing system, kind of like Harry Potter's. So you want to find those things that are interesting, and it's never too early to start talking about possibilities. But it's really important to help our kids think broadly and not be focused on the name of the school. And that's something that communities really kind of press inadvertently on high ability students. I've had lots of students say, well, everybody in my community, when they say, where are you going to college? Oh, I'm sure you're going to MIT or Harvard or one of those. They're not. Everybody can't afford that. It's not the right fit for everybody, and very few kids get in. So thinking of that as being your only options is a mistake. I encourage you to look up this video on YouTube. Where you go is not who you'll be. So Frank Rooney is a New York Times reporter, and he did a whole bunch of research on the college admissions process because it is an intense process. And students feel a lot of pressure, and so do parents. So he's looked at what a lot of notable people, so politicians and CEOs and leaders of different companies and social leaders, where they've gone to college, and they are not all Ivies and big name schools. So he has a great kind of talk about that process. It's long, so you want to sit down and do it. But I think it's a really good picture of thinking about how to begin and think about fit for college. All right. And then thinking about those college applications. So a lot of times folks are thinking about, that balance between GPA, and it's all about your test scores. It's really important to remember that your child is going to be compared to other people at their same school. So you send the school sends a profile, and your child is really compared mostly against kids at their same school and those opportunities. Another thing that's important to know is that most schools unweight GPA. So high schools weight GPA a lot as part of how they get class rank, but colleges recalculate all of that because every school has a different class grade weighting system. So they're never comparing apples to apples. They want to look to see, are there some AP classes? Did you take something challenging? Did you challenge yourself? And over time, did you take on challenges? So maybe you made a B the first time you took an AP class, but you made an A the next time you took an AP class. So they're looking for that progress. If you're applying to other than the state, some state schools have essays, some don't. So making sure that your child has help and feedback on their essays, that they're building relationships with teachers who can write them letters of recommendation. I would encourage you to think about your child's extracurricular activities as something that enriches them personally, not as a laundry list for college applications. Colleges are not interested in 20 different things. They want to see what your child's been devoted to and committed to and really enjoys and gets out, gets something from. Applying early in the process is important. Money and spots run out. So applying earlier is definitely better. And it's a complicated process, so navigating that and staying organized is important. Okay, a brief pause here for questions about that section.
So I think your advice of making sure that parents listen to their children, first of all, when it comes to the college, what kind of college experience do they want? And getting our parents to understand that not everybody's going to go to Harvard or Yale. And there are some of those private universities who are going to offer opportunities for students that they may not typically be able to get in a larger university, like you mentioned. It's just making sure that we have that open mind as a parent when it comes to where we think our child should go versus where our child actually wants to go. And they need to go somewhere where they know it's going to foster their career. They're going to need to make sure that, as you mentioned, that the university offers those different avenues, whether it is a co-op, whether it is a job share, whatever it is, but that if your child wants to be an engineer, that they need to base their college choice on the engineering school, not necessarily the location or the name per se. And I have nothing against Harvard or Yale. Obviously, those are very fantastic schools, but we need to make sure that our children are being accounted for when we're looking at those universities.
Yes. And there are wonderful schools for art, and there are wonderful schools for drama and music. And it may be that college or university might not be the right fit right away, or it might not be the right fit long term. It really is about following your child's passion and making sure that they're having post-secondary opportunities that fit their interests. My brother can rebuild anything. He has amazing skills at rebuilding cars and engines. He went to technical school, became a diesel mechanic. The company he works for flies him all over in a private plane for him to do logistics and work on diesel engines. And he makes more than anyone in my family currently, who all the rest of us went to a traditional 4-year school, because he followed his passion and he's really good at that. And my family enabled him and gave him the opportunities to follow that passion. So we want to let our kids find that passion. Now, it might be that, when your kid is 18, they don't know what they want to do with the rest of their life. And that's okay. College is a place to explore, but it's not a place to go in debt while you're exploring. So finding schools that are a good financial fit, that have a wide offering, can be a really powerful experience. Success in college is more about what a person does with the opportunities they have than the name of the school or how much the school costs. It's about what you do with those opportunities. Just like it's about what our kids do with their abilities that matters, not just having them, it's developing them and acting on them. So between now and college, I've had some parents ask during this non-traditional instruction, are there ways to do some enrichment with my child? Because we know teachers are working really hard right now. And in some ways, this environment is facilitating differentiation so that teachers are targeting different levels of instruction for different kids. And some of our kids are having more time. Some of those extracurriculars aren't happening, so they have more time that they could spend on enrichment. So my number one recommendation is to help your child find a passion project or an independent study that they can do. It's a good time to investigate interests or to develop hobbies. And it's a time to dabble, try something. Do you really like this? Well, then get really good at it. If not, try something else. But our students need some structure and some help in building a plan for their research. So make a plan and then check in on your child's progress. How's it going? Man, what was really hard about this? Ooh, how many times have you tried it? How many times do you think it's going to take you to practice this to get it? When our kids play video games, they try over and over and over and over ad nauseum. Well, that's no different when you're learning something else. And then find ways for them to share what they've learned. Maybe it's creating a website or posting something on YouTube. Maybe it's just telling a friend about it or somebody in your family who's also interested in that. There's a great process that you can find a lot of resources for online called the iSearch process. If you just Google iSearch process, you'll find a number of links that kind of describe the process and some resources. And Read, Write, Think has one that's really accessible. If you're looking for something more course-based, my number one suggestion in an online community is Online G3. It is designed to be an enrichment online program. That's why it exists, and it started long before the pandemic with middle school age students. So it's kind of a way to take some workshop or interest-based classes with other students who are interested in that topic and love learning. But there is a cost to that program. Hoagie's Gifted is the end-all be-all website that has everything related to gifted in one place and can be very overwhelming. But they have activities for kids and resources for kids as well. So Hoagie's, like the sandwich, is a good resource as well. Stanford has some pre-collegiate studies programs that are online. We sort of missed the enrollment period for now, but that might be something that you look for in the future. Johns Hopkins, their Center for Talented Youth, has online programs for gifted students as well. And then, of course, probably my favorite is the one right here at WKU, the Center for Gifted Studies. Particularly in the summer, they offer SCATs and VAMPI, which are residential experiences, although they did them online this past year, that focus on developing middle school and high school students. They also have Saturday programs for younger students and summer programs for younger students as well. And then to kind of take us into our wrap up, a few more parent resources. NAGC, the National Association for Gifted Children, has parent tip sheets. So if you just Googled NAGC parent or parent tip sheets, you'll get there really easily. They have just little 1 or 2 pagers about all different aspects of parenting gifted kids. Then there are many organizations that support gifted kids as well. CAGE, the Kentucky Association for Gifted Education. I really encourage you to join CAGE. Having an organization that speaks, particularly with legislators, about the need for gifted education and financial support in schools for gifted ed is really important. And the more members CAGE has, the more effective they can be at convincing the legislature that we should have money in schools for gifted programs. And right now we'd like more funding than we had in 1990, which we do not. So your membership in CAGE and advocacy with CAGE can make a difference. And then SING is also SENG, really great place for parents. And then my final piece, if you were looking for one book to support you in parenting gifted children, A Parent's Guide to Gifted Children by James Webb and some others, that's the place I would go. So with that, I am happy to take any last questions, and I appreciate your joining us and your efforts to support your kids and making sure that they're challenged and ready for persevering in their futures.
So we did have a question. When you have a child, a gifted child in particular, we know that they can be very headstrong and very determined. So how do you ask your child or tell your child or order your child, however you want to phrase the question, to either stop doing something that's undesirable or ask them to do something, for example, a chore or an activity?
Okay. Yeah. It is important to remember that you always get to be the parent, no matter how intense or headstrong they are. It is a matter of knowing your child and helping them navigate through their intensity when they say no to something. Sometimes that's about helping them understand why they need to do whatever it is you need them to do, or to stop doing whatever they need to do. My son has very intense reactions to very small things, which as a parent is exhausting and annoying, but it's who he is. So we're still working on navigating that. So a lot of times it's, I need him to take a breath and I have to take a breath before we continue talking about it. So when he's having a big reaction, I have to kind of help him get to a place where he can breathe a little bit and then revisit the conversation later. And often when I revisit the conversation, say, no, this is really important. You do have to empty the dishwasher because we all contribute to the household and that's one of your responsibilities. Eventually, with enough calm, he does do that. And sometimes it might be something else, and we might have consequences. Well, I'm sorry, until you do this, you can't play your video game. But it's usually a lot of talking and understanding why I'm asking him to do what he needs to do after everybody's calmed down. So for me, that's a big piece. Now, when it comes to doing well in class, encouraging students and helping them understand why they need to put forth effort or why taking on this challenge is important in the long run is kind of helpful. They have to know what's in it for them because they aren't going to always just do it for the grade. So that's kind of a different approach, but it's still very much about counseling and talking and that kind of thing. Gifted kids tend to do better when they know why. I hope that answered the question.
It did. She was very thankful for that. I very much enjoyed this evening session, maybe selfishly a little bit because I do have my own personal children, and it's just nice to have a reaffirming action and someone out there telling me that it's okay and that you're doing what's best for your child, especially when we do start thinking about college, because it is a big step for our students and for us as parents to understand that we need to make sure that our children are going to do what they're passionate about, what they love. And I really enjoyed you telling us that it's okay if they choose not to go to college. I've told parents that many times in the past. And sometimes, like your brother, for example, making, way more money than probably all of us put together, even though he doesn't have a college education, it's okay. He's doing something very important, and he's more importantly doing something that he is passionate about and he loves. And I think as parents, we need to remember that we want what's best for our children, but we have to make sure that we want what's best for our children and what our children want.
And it has to be on their timeline sometimes. So taking a gap year or not going straight to college, but going to college later when they're ready, that works successfully too. You have to meet your child where they are and support your child, not, what everybody else says. So thanks for this opportunity.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I did link the resources in the bottom in the comments section. So everything that Miss Lynette spoke about this evening, there is a link so that you can easily find it, whether it's the Gatton Academy, whether it's the talk that she had about the gentleman talking about college selection, that's all there.